Hey, how's it going, everybody? Today starts the beginning of a journey that I'm kind of going on just for myself, which is watching the DCEU from start to finish. Today we're going to be talking about Man of Steel, which is a movie I've already seen, and I have seen most of the DCEU projects already, but I am going to be watching them again, rewatching the ones that I have seen, and then watching for the first time a few of the ones that I haven't. I wanted to do this so I could talk about the different DCEU movies one at a time and give special focus to an individual project, because the DCEU as a whole gets a lot of flack. It gets crapped on a lot, and I'm one of those people who love to crap on it as well. But there are some really good movies in the DCEU, and then there's some, not as good ones, but I think it would be interesting to go back with hindsight now that it's over to see the different movies and see what made those movies good or what made those movies bad. I know there's a lot of problems with different ones at the time, and maybe they aged better than they came out as. Maybe they aged like wine, or maybe they just, aged like milk. We'll see. Starting today with Man of Steel, a movie that I watched for the third time maybe a few weeks ago. I've seen it, I think, twice, and then bits and pieces here and there. Starting with this movie, which is over 10 years old now. This movie aged really well. Now, Man of Steel came out over 10 years ago now, which feels crazy to think about, but this movie still looks so good. The effects, the costuming, it all looks so good that this movie could have come out today. I think that the opening sequence with Krypton's destruction still looks so good that it will continue to look good for the next 10, 20 years. It'll be one of those movies and one of those sequences that will stand the test of time. And I think there's still some argument to be had based on preference, but in my opinion, the fight scenes for Superman and the flight sequences are some of the best we've ever gotten. Top two, if not the number one. I think that the costuming that they did for people like General Zod and Jor-El and the other Kryptonian warriors, I think it all looks really good. It looks alien and military at the same time, which is obviously what they were going for, but I think they did a great job, and it's probably the best Kryptonian costuming we've ever had. I know not everyone's gonna agree with this, but I like the Superman suit for Man of Steel. I know that there are the purists that want the red trunks on top. I know there are people who wish the suit colors were brighter. I get all that. In a perfect Superman movie, I would agree. I would want those things as well. But for what this movie is, I think that the suit that they designed for this movie works really well. When I first watched this movie, I liked it. I gave it like a 7 out of 10. It was a good movie, one that I would rewatch, but not one that I was dying to rewatch. And then the second time I watched this movie wasn't long after, I don't think. I saw it on TV and I just stopped and watched it. And then I saw bits and pieces, but no more than a minute or two at a time since then. And it's been like 7, 8, maybe 9 years since I saw it the last time. And when I watched this movie this time, I was kind of amazed at how good it was. I would bump it up to an 8 out of 10. I don't really like to rank things like that, but it was better than I remember it, is the point I'm trying to make. And it kind of appalls me, because I've seen lately people just kind of crapping on this movie as if this movie isn't really good. I don't know why people are so upset. There are some things that I know people complain about, but we'll get into those. I don't think they're that big of a deal. There are sort of two groups when it comes to this movie, and all Zack Snyder movies, I might add. There are the Zack Snyder fanatics who will praise everything he does, and everyone else. And I'm definitely in the everyone else category. I have criticized Zack Snyder a lot, not on this YouTube channel because I haven't filmed too many of these yet, but I am not at all a Zack Snyder apologist. That being said, this is a great movie. He does a great job. Everything Zack Snyder does visually looks really good. I always say, when I'm talking about these things with my friends, that if Zack Snyder wasn't a director, he would be the best cinematographer on this planet. But because he is a director, you kind of get his highs and lows a little bit more. Everything he does looks immaculate. But the story and directing choices aren't always up to snuff with how the movie looks. And this is not one of those movies. I'd say the story and the directing choices are up to par with how visually stunning this movie is. There are some others, specifically in the DCEU, I think you probably know which one I'm talking about, that isn't quite there. One that looks really good, but the story just doesn't fit. It's not there. But keeping with Man of Steel, we'll get to that one later. I think that this is one of his better directed movies, and Zack Snyder is one of those people who does quite a bit of comic book movies, even though people criticize, oh, he did a bad job with the DCEU. I mean, it wasn't the best job ever. He's not Kevin Feige by any means, but it perfectly makes sense why he was put in that position. If you look at Watchmen, if you look at 300, his comic book adaptations earned him that job. And whether or not he did justice to DC or not is kind of up in the air. It depends on who you ask. But as far as this movie goes, the first movie of the DCEU, he definitely did his due diligence with this one. But like I was saying earlier, people who have problems with this movie, that's one of them. Zack Snyder is some people's problem with this movie. They don't like his directing, or they don't like his writing. They don't like the choices he made. But in my opinion, he did a great job with this. I don't fault him for anything to do with this movie. As a matter of fact, there's nothing for me to fault him for, because I don't really have any big criticism with this movie. One of the criticisms I've heard about this movie is that there's too much destruction, chaos, and death at the end of the movie when Superman fights Zod. But to those people I ask, why do you think that? This is a year one Superman who's fighting against someone whose purpose in life is to be a soldier and a warrior. Also someone who you just took everything away from. You took his purpose away, and now he wants to just take away everything you love. So of course, a year one Superman is gonna have a whole lot of trouble stopping someone like Zod from doing the terrible things that he's gonna do. And I know that sounds terrible. People like to put Superman on this pedestal where he can save everyone and stop every bad guy before they do anything wrong. But that's just not how it works. Especially in a movie adaptation where there has to be stakes, and movies and TV shows are grounded in a different sort of reality than comics. There has to be certain laws and, hard lines where things make good cinema versus just, oh, Superman saved the day and no one was harmed again. Another criticism I've heard about this movie is Superman doesn't kill, but he kills Zod. So we're looking pretty much at the same explanation for the last thing. This is a year one Superman fighting against someone who has superior fighting skills. And while Superman does have the upper hand, he has Zod around the neck. Zod is still gonna kill those people. So what's he supposed to do? I know that people don't want to hear that, but it is pretty black and white. Like, he did what he had to do. And going forward, he'll grow to be better. But it's his first year being Superman, his first supervillain. So unfortunately, he did what he had to do. And it's not the first time we've seen in all of Superman portrayals and adaptations that Superman has had to kill or hasn't been able to save people. But I really don't know why people take particular issue with this one. Maybe it's just because it's so in your face that he kills Zod, but he did what he had to do. I don't have any problem with it. I will, however, critique it in my own way. You should have let Clark go get that dog out of the truck. I know that the world's not ready to see Superman, but if you're gonna go get it, if you had made it back, the world wouldn't have thought that you were a superhuman. So you should have just let Clark go, and you could have him blow around in the wind and pretend like he's getting, impacted. But at the end of the day, he's gonna be okay. And no one would have thought he was some superhuman if he went and got that dog. If he would have got his leg stuck like you did, he could have got out of it. And no one would have thought he was an alien. They would have just thought, oh, that's lucky. So that's my critique, is that should have been the plan from the get-go, to just let Clark go do it. Getting away from all the negativity that surrounds this movie, I want to talk about one of the bright spots, which is the casting. I think that Henry Cavill was born to play Superman, and he does a great job with it. And some of the other castings aren't necessarily one-to-one accurate with their comic book counterparts, but they all do a great job in their roles. Amy Adams, for example, isn't the person you think of when you're looking at a comic panel of Lois Lane, but she does a great job in that role, and she definitely gets the mannerisms and the character down, even if she isn't a one-to-one physical representation of Lois Lane in the comics. It's kind of incredible when you look at the castings for this movie and how well they all turned out, because the DCEU is notorious for its ups and downs in casting. There are some really inspired castings, ones that pure genius, whoever decided it, you need a raise. And then there are some that make you wonder, how did you ever get a job? The person who decided that you should play this character should be fired. You should never cast again. And I don't understand it. How do you have this in the same universe? And fortunately, we were spared that in this movie, because if we had that in this movie, a severe miscast like we do in the next few, the DCEU would have died right then and there. Another criticism I have of this movie is that Henry Cavill doesn't really do the, bumbling, nerdy kind of Clark Kent that Christopher Reeve was able to do. It's a different kind of Clark Kent, the, strong farmhand raised in Kansas type of Clark Kent, and I think it works for this movie. It's just not the classic Clark Kent. It's not really a diss on Henry Cavill's performance or anything. It's more of a choice, an off-screen choice that they decided to do, which I think still works. But I've already been talking too long, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I did want to state again that upon rewatch a few weeks ago, this movie was way better than I remember it being when I first watched it, and I still really liked it on my first watch. So I think that this movie has aged like wine, and I think that, in my opinion, this movie will stand the test of time for years to come. It still will be a great movie. I plan on watching through the DCEU entirely from Man of Steel to Aquaman 2, just so I can see everything that I missed and then rewatch things that I might not remember very well, and then make a consensus on the universe as a whole. These videos aren't necessarily ones I expect to grow my YouTube channel, because people aren't really searching for like 10-year-old movies quite as much as things that are new releases. But this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, go through and watch the ones that I've missed. But it's been so long since I've seen some of the ones I have seen, I thought I might as well just go and watch them all chronologically from start to finish. There are a few exceptions to the chronologically thing. I'm gonna leave Zack Snyder's Justice League and Peacemaker for the end. Number one, because I don't have HBO Max right now for Peacemaker. And number two, I wanted to watch the theatrical cut of Justice League for continuity reasons, and then compare it to Zack Snyder's version at the end. And I didn't want to do Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League back to back, because I felt like that would be a bit odd to watch those movies, in the same week or consecutive days. But I will get to that. It'll just be at the end. That all being said, if you did want to help me out, a like or a subscription to the YouTube channel would help me out a lot. If you want, comment if you like this movie or if you don't like it, or do you agree with what I said in my opinion, or do you have a different one? Let me know. Until next time, I don't know what next time will be. Actually, it'll probably be another Bad Batch video, and then obviously the next DCEU thing will be Batman versus Superman. So until then, bye.